excited for you guys to meet both our guest today and our co-host. So why don't we start first with a director who is absolutely one of the most wonderful, inspiring, life-changing directors that I've had the opportunity to work with, and that is Luke Matheny. Thank you so much, Luke, for being here and participating in this. I don't want to undersell your accomplishments, so I'll let you introduce yourself briefly about what you've done.
I'm happy to undersell them. Well, thanks for having me. I work mainly in TV as a director. I'm also a writer, and when I can, I try to get myself some acting parts, although I could get some pointers from you guys about how to do better with that.
What's your most embarrassing role you've ever played?
I was on a reality show
that alone
on MTV where
It's getting worse.
it was supposed to be like people who were dorks in high school who became cool when they were older, and then
Just like real life, you mean that?
well, and we were like the love squad, and we had to counsel this kid, a dorky kid who was in high school, but I was a grown up.
Wait, define love squad.
It was like we had to like help this kid ask out a girl or
Got
whatever. And I think it was on TV. It was sort of a disaster because it didn't really work. And like,
Oh no.
he got very confident, but like all the girls at school still saw him the same way. It's sort of hard to. But then we like went to a park, and then he like just started talking to some girl who didn't know him, and he did fine. But it was like everyone who already knew, like it was, they could just tell something was up. So
And continue your resume.
yeah, right. So yeah, I've worked mainly in TV, and mainly kind of high-end kids television, I guess, on Amazon, and that's how I know Shaan. We worked together on a show called Gordimer Gibbon's Life on Normal Street, which was a children's show, kind of a supernatural Wonder Years, I guess is how you would call it. And I was a director and writer and for a long time a showrunner on that one. And did a couple other things for Amazon. Also, in kind of the adult space, I did Marin on IFC. About 10 episodes of that. I did a thing with Paul Feig, an episode of Black Jesus on Adult Swim.
And you have an Academy Award-winning short film.
That's true. My grad school thesis at NYU ended up winning an Academy Award. That was
great.
like in 2011. It was called God of Love. And yeah, I was just really hoping to win the kind of screenwriting prize at the NYU festival, and which I did. But it ended up kind of taking on a life of its own and ended up winning the Oscar, which obviously, opened some doors. I moved out to LA, and I guess I've been here about 8 years now. And just got back from Toronto, was working on an Apple project there. I don't think I'm allowed to say what the name of it is, but it is a kids mystery show with the supernatural element. And been busy with that and developing some other stuff as well.
All right. Billions of questions for you regarding all things casting.
I have questions for you too. This is very unusual to hear it from the actor's perspective as well.
Well, great. So let's meet Claudia, our co-host,
Hi.
Claudia Keener. So why don't you tell the people who you are?
Who I am? I'm a young child. No. I am pretty new in the business. I graduated from UCLA, the School of Theater, Film, and Television. Done mainly commercial work, print work, but trying to get more into theatrical TV and film, and just trying to figure it all out.
And so skilled and so fun to work with.
Thanks.
And so it's just a matter of when, not if.
So how did you find your way to Shaan?
Through my first commercial agent, who is a dear friend of both of ours.
Alex Fox at
Alex
New.
Fox. He introduced me to Shaan before he repped me. He was like, you know what, go to Shaan and I'll see if I want you. But yeah, no, it's ever since I met you, you've been my mentor, coach, good friend. Like.
So what kind of work have you been doing?
With Shaan or commercially?
Acting, not with Shaan. Just what have you been going out for? What kind of work have you been doing? Where have people seen you, or what's taking up your time as an actor?
I currently have a National Ford commercial out.
Ayo.
Love Ford motor cars. They're the best.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
love Ford too.
They're the OG. Yeah.
I have a campaign for Nordstrom's Boney Levy. It's a jewelry line out. What else? I've just got a new manager at Luber Rockland, so he's been sending me out for theatrical things, which is great. Fingers crossed. But yeah,
what
mainly.
play did I see you in at UC?
Oh, you came and saw that.
Yeah.
I remember. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was in a show called Georgia's Waiting. That was a emotional roller coaster. That was a tough one. Yeah, I kind of miss theater, but I grew up in Chicago, and it was a very theater-based training.
Well, and since you're here, this is a good opportunity just to give a shout out to Alex, because Alex has been one of the most amazing presences in my life as well. He's going through a battle with stage 4 cancer right now. So anyone who is going to be listening to this, if you go on GoFundMe and look up Alex Fox, you'll see him holding up his arm, and he's in a battle for his life right now. So if you're a charitable person and you have some available resources to throw him a couple of bucks, he's
honestly,
exploring all options.
Helps.
Yeah. But Alex is so awesome. I have had, it's the only relationship I've had with an agent where he will send people to me and he will say, listen, I'm thinking of signing this person. I would love for you to work with them and tell me what you think and see where their skills are at or where they need to be developed, so that kind of like sending a used car to a mechanic and saying, tell me the state of this thing, do a 20-point inspection. And
I want to do this with you.
It's fun. It's been so fun. And you know, Alex, New Talent agency was partnered with New Models. So it was a lot of beauty clientele. So like a lot of models were also getting asked to go out as actors. And so then they would send them to me to either coach them or meet with them. And every single person that I ever met through Alex had a great head on their shoulders, was super professional. Like, it was a joy to get a call or an email from him that he was sending somebody to me. And so many of those new clients had become part of our class family. And so it's been...
And Alex, he didn't really act like an agent. He acted more of a manager, and like he treated all of his clients like family. When he was diagnosed or had to stop working, he individually called all of his contacts, every one of his clients, to tell them what was going on, which just shows his character. And
you know, he spent every moment until he had to close the agency down trying to get them placed at new agencies and helping them continue to have their career, while he should have been focusing on his own life, Alex. But anyway, so that's how we met. Yeah. And then one of her relatives is another one of my friends and past coaching clients.
Yeah.
So let's dive into this conversation. Because this conversation is about learning about the casting process from your perspective. And so I guess a really good introductory question would be, you know, what do you consistently see actors do in auditions that you think is both positive and helps you really see how you could use them in stories and makes you look forward to wanting to work with them? And then perhaps even some things you think are unnecessary, things that they clearly don't understand about the casting process, which gets in the way.
Sure. Well, I guess just to describe how it usually comes to me, which I guess when I was in film school, I didn't realize that the casting would work mostly this way, which is you get a link to a casting website, and it's usually during your lunch, or you don't have that much time to actually go through 10 different auditions for, say, a waiter character or something, or someone who has just sort of that tends to be more like an average day. There's the casting of like a lead role in a series, which is one thing, but kind of the bulk of my work with casting are people who have, you know, guest star parts on a show. And like I say, it's just clicking through a bunch of links that, you know, you wish you had time to watch all of them many times over, sometimes even to the end, which you sort of don't all the time.
Are you talking about self-tape auditions or?
Well, the casting director of the process will have recorded each of the auditions, like in a space like we're in right now, and then each of those get fed into this website. So if the part is Claudia, then I click on the Claudia link, and then I get 8 headshots there. Honestly, the headshots don't matter too much to me. Well,
what do you look for in a headshot, though? Because we've discussed headshots before, and I still want to get back to, you know, auditioning. But
I guess headshots to me feel a little like a relic, like something that's a little less relevant to me now. I just need to click on that link and see the read.
So as long as the link is good, the headshot is irrelevant. It can be very basic. It can be.
Well, because at that point, by the time it gets to me, the casting director has narrowed it down to 7 people. So I'm going to have to watch them all anyway. So it sort of doesn't matter what the headshot says.
So when you watch these, do you find that sometimes you watch them, there's something that immediately, is a turn off, or immediately you say, this is the right kind of person? Is there something that immediately you go positive or negative? Is there a mistake you see or something that people do that other actors should know about?
Well, I would say it's tricky because, you work on a scene. The scene probably has some build to it that climaxes in a more intense thing at the end. The catch is, if you flub the first couple lines there, you've sort of fallen off the horse, and it's much harder to win me back if my time is kind of limited. So that's sort of the first thing. Like, don't save your mistakes for... or frankly, if you mess up a line like a little later in the scene and it's all going great, I'm happy to forgive it. It's fine. But if you've already hooked me right in the first couple lines, then I will be more compelled to watch. And this isn't like a rocket science kind of gut decision here, but it's the people who don't seem like they're acting are the ones who tend to be a little better. Yeah,
Really?
it's well, I think maybe sometimes I can see like the idea of the actor so clearly, or like they thought they were going to come in and do it this specific way, or some kind of accent, or like a prop that they brought in that like draws a little too much attention to itself. And sometimes these props work, or if like
trying too hard.
Yeah, or not letting the important stuff, which is your ability to connect with the character and to connect with the audience, connect with the camera, not letting those stuff come to the foreground. And instead it's like, oh, they wore like a goofy tie, or like something with a mug.
I love that you said that, because I feel that is such a common thing where actors are underskilled or undertrained or underprepared. And so they put their energy into these other gimmicks or these other things.
And sometimes it comes from a very, sorry to interrupt, from a very natural place where it'll just be scripted. It'll say something like, takes a sip from a cup, which is a little less important for the...
Do you want to see someone
No.
mimic?
Unless the whole thing...
It's scene, about the cup.
Unless the scene has to do with that, like, feel free to disregard a lot of those stage directions, because it just already adds another layer of artifice to an artificial process anyway, if you have to deal with this like prop. So the most you can do to like tilt the odds in your favor of making it seem like a real, like authentic kind of communication of emotion and wit or whatever, like that's what you want to do. Don't get lost in like, and a lot of this has just been, I get sent on auditions. I have an acting agent. I get sent out maybe 2 or 3 times a year. I've literally never gotten cast in anything unless it was something I wrote for myself on a show that I was directing. And it's always interesting for me to do it from that side, where like I'm like, oh yeah, I over-invested in like this blocking stuff that does not really add up to anything.
Well, it also goes to show that you can have an Academy Award as the actor in your winning film and still not be going out more than 2-3 times a year.
Oh, totally. No, it's always like it seems to be for like a strange looking person. I always say, or like an affable IT guy.
Oh, no. It's interesting though, because in my training, professors and teachers, they would always say, make a bold choice, go in with a bold choice. And I think some actors take that too seriously.
Or they don't know how to interpret that.
Right.
Like what do I have to choose is a big issue for a lot of actors.
Yeah.
So instead they say, okay, well, what would that mean in the theater world? Would that mean creating a whole new persona from scratch? Like the way they walk, the way they talk, the accent, lisps, whatever, props, as opposed to thinking like, okay, in this story, how do I feel about every person, place, thing, or event in the scene? Like, what is the story, and what am I actually trying to communicate to this person? Why? And to focus on making that the most compelling choice you can make. And that compelling part of it is with your skill and your training to understand, that you can lean into certain choices and aspects of the story that bring out what's funny about it, bring out what's heart-wrenching about it. A perfect example of that is if you have like a victim in a procedural, like CSI or something, it makes the victim more powerfully impacting to the audience if there's somebody who's likable and who's sweet, because you wouldn't want bad things to happen to someone who's sweet. But if it's somebody who's already kind of like a disaster and is mean to people, then you don't have as much sympathy when bad things happen to a choice like
Good
that.
riddance.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a very oversimplified, obvious way, but in much more nuanced ways, you can make decisions that bring out what the opportunity is. You have to obey the writing, but you can bring out what's dramatic.
I had a screenwriting professor at NYU who, there was a phrase I always liked. This had more to do with writing, but it was appropriate and original. So it's like this scene, it's very original, but it doesn't quite advance the story you need it the way to. Or it's like, this scene makes sense, it plays, but there's just something lacking originality about it. So
we were just listening to Bulletproof Writing this morning. I don't know if you ever listened to Bulletproof Writing. We were just listening to that, and they interview, screenwriters and directors and showrunners, and they said that exact same thing, that oftentimes in scripts people insert something that doesn't drive the story forward. They feel it shows a facet of their character, but it does nothing for the story, so they need to find another home for that sort of.
Yeah, so you always and I think that's probably there's a similar situation with actors a little bit, where you want to do enough to distinguish yourself, and I think when you're younger and more passionate, like sometimes that originality gets privileged a little more. So you're like, oh, they're never going to forget me when I go in this room. But then by doing that, you kind of forgot that, oh, you were just the car rental attendant who needed to hand the keys over. And picture where that's going to fit in the rest of the series. Obviously, if you're auditioning for like a lead character that needs to be a memorable, you have to find your lane a little bit and just make it so the thing you're showing, I mean, it's easy to get in your own head about it, but like, I don't like casting. I want it to be over so I can start working with the actors. Like, it's not like shopping. I don't like, I like just the actual, I like purchasing. Like, I like having the thing and enjoying with it. Yeah. So it's like, I'm just waiting to find someone who I think is what I need, and then it'll be over. And that's honestly communicated like pretty quickly, because there will be so for like a guest star role, I'll get the link with 15 people or whatever, and then we'll call back 3 of them. And sometimes I just hope there's someone who's just a slam dunk and I don't do any callbacks, so I'm like, okay, this person's amazing, so let's just hire them. And this is also from the perspective of, I was an EP on this Apple show that I did. So then you also have to get Apple's, obviously, like the network's opinions and things like that. And sometimes it's crazily different from what you had in your head, and it's completely frustrating. And then sometimes you have to hire the person they told you to hire, and that person ends up being pretty good. And it's like, it's an inexact science, or it's like.
Well, it just shows how much all of this work is a collaboration. I'm constantly telling actors who are mainly theater-based or don't understand that, in the theater world, you can do a one-person show and go have success. In the on-camera world, it is a we sport. It is not a me sport. This is a collaboration from start to finish, and everybody has to make room for everybody else's opinions, and everyone gets to touch it in their specific way. And even working with Jack over the last 3 years, just knowing how much impact that the sound design supervisor has over the final product that you hear, and so many things are taking place you never even considered, and as a principal performer, just on set shooting or something. It's amazing how many artists touch this stuff, and you have to make room for it.
Yeah, no, I always think about that with it's like when you watch a movie or a TV show, the main actor or like the lead actors, that's how you experience the story. That's who you feel for. That's who breaks your heart. That's who you're rooting for. And it seems like that's the most important thing of all. But then you go to that's when you're watching something. Then you go on a film set or a TV set, and it's like the actors are there, but it's like one part of a big puzzle. Or like if you just showed up on set and you wouldn't understand that the actors actually, once the whole thing is done, is like a massively important part of it, because there's so many technicians walking around. So yeah, it's absolutely a collaborative thing. And, some actors can get sort of annoying by dominating too much attention. Yeah. Well, because it's like, from my perspective, like everyone's got jobs, everyone's got families here, and sometimes it's sort of hard to sympathize too much with actors when I'm watching other crew members like there for 14-hour days and like pretty thankless capacities.
I think the crew are heroes, man. They're there. They're the first ones there, the last ones to leave. They work so hard in all these conditions. Actors roll up. You roll up the red carpet. You make them feel very taken care of so that when the cameras are ready and everything's ready to go, they can do their best work.
Right.
But that is not everybody's experience on set.
Well, it's the whole process, and rightfully, is catered to make it a comfortable experience for the actors. But like, who has a job where that's like even a thing? like it's not like the craft services person shows up to work and it's like the whole thing has been lined up to make the craft services person comfortable. like the actors are. I mean, it's pretty amazing. Like the whole thing is set up to help them succeed, which is amazing. And that's not to minimize how difficult it is or how important it is, but I guess that's sometimes there's like attitudes there that I feel like, why do these actors get away with kind of bad behavior sometimes, or like being a little haughty?
So now as a director, when you say actors with bad behavior on the set, what does that mean, bad behavior?
I guess just being a little rude. I work in a lot of kids things too, and kids actually tend to be pretty good. And I think that kind of keeps everyone a little honest, or people feel a little weird being like a jerk around like children.
Oh my God, the vibe on a kid's show set is so lovely.
Especially a nice kid show. Yeah. It's like, and I think everyone likes the kids and they want, it's a gift that keeps on giving. But I think, the bad behavior is just like temper things, outlandish requests, temper stuff for sure, or kind of capricious changing of mind of like, we talked about doing this in many ways, but now you want to sit over on this other side of the room. This changes up our whole camera setup. We're going to be behind now if we do this. So yeah, sometimes it's just, and I would say for the most part, actors tend to be pretty polite, only because I think like they know they have to be.
I mean, the whole casting process is set up to make sure we don't present bad options to the clients.
Right.
Behavior on set is a huge part of that. So, I'm sure every casting professional who's listening to this can relate to the idea that it's our job to protect the client from bad behavior and bad actors.
Have you ever thought, I'm not going to work with this person ever again?
Sure. Yeah.
Who was it and what happened? Give me the name. I've thought that, and I've ended up working with those people again.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Well, this is so uncontroversial, but I did work on a indie feature where Chevy Chase was in it. I think it's no secret he's been sort of difficult to work with, and I found it an unpleasant experience that I wouldn't want to repeat. I think his career and mine will both survive what I've just said.
So you're not directing the remake of Modern Problems?
Or Foul Play.
With Goldie Hawn.
Yeah.
What's the example you said of like temper? Because you brought that up twice. Like, is that resistance to direction? Is it frustration with the slow nature of setups and getting ready?
Well, as you know, like anything that's like a little any shot that's a little complicated that is, let's say, involves a dolly and then like a prop, or like a prop that doesn't quite work the way it needs to, or something that can be a little frustrating. I worked with one actor who had like a tape gun thing that he had to hang up flyers for, and it was like it was one of those things in retrospect. It's like we should have tested this prop a little better, so it was a little less frustrating, because it was annoying, but he just like freaked out about it and started screaming at everybody. He was a little self-aware that he like apologized kind of pretty soon after, but it's just like, that's unpleasant. Like no one needs that.
Yeah.
But then, by the same token, like directorially for me, then I'm like, all right, how can I avoid this? Or like, that was a good reminder of me of like, all right, if we're asking an actor to do all this business with a prop that's written in the script, let's just make sure that's really well tested by the time we get there, because it's the kind of thing that you would think, oh, he just needs to tape a piece of paper on the telephone pole. How hard could that be? Well, give it a second. Like it might actually be kind of tricky. So that just helps me kind of do my homework more, which isn't to say, I guess I'm just kind of like conflict averse. So I'd just rather just like create a situation where there is no reason for a conflict. So that's just kind of how I approach it.
You know, I've been doing these table reads and casting these things, and two things I want to bring up. One is that casting, to me, is the method of last resort. If I can cast the entire read from people that I already know, love, and trust, who I know can do the job, and avoid having to go through the entire casting process for them, and I'm not even bringing people in for auditions, I'm just going through their submissions online and looking at their profiles and things like that. But if I can avoid that and just use great people, I would rather do that.
Yeah.
I do the exact same thing when I'm calling in talent. The people I've worked with for years, they're my first go-tos.
So a lot of people who are listening, it's like if you're not getting auditions, it might be because the people who are creating these projects already have a lot of people they know, love, and trust.
I have a question for you on that topic. You said, you get your 10 or 15 auditions, and I wanted to go back to this, and you have to look at them over lunch or whatever for the guy who gives the keys. How often do you get that list and think, I've worked with this guy in this show, I'd love to call him in too? How often are you calling in your personal
Well, that's how you got the mayonnaise. We worked in this pilot called A Kid Called Mayonnaise, and there was sort of this eccentric, strange character that we needed to fill, and Shaan came to mind, and I'd worked with him on this other show, and then I think I remember even like emailing you, even like, because I think you still had to read for it. You still had to tape yourself. I think I even told you like a couple like, here's how to get the part, like do it this way, which is great. And I had a friend from college once who she got a part on Gordimer, but I remember even like emailing her, like telling her how to do it, or just trying to give her some clues, because it's rare that like the director can just have I mean, you're still gonna have to get this choice approved by other people, and the director can go to bat for different people or make a strong case, but it's rare that you just have like slam dunk ability to like shut everyone else up. So yeah, every once in a while, like there will be a character where there's someone I worked for before, and it's like, oh, Shaan would be great for this, and then I just kind of reach out privately and make it happen.
So what's your advice to actors, who are doing the submissions, they're working with their agents, but there's also additional relationships that can keep you working in this business? How does an actor best endear themselves to a director? What's too much? What's too little?
I mean, it's rare that the relationship that's most important to me is the working relationship on set. Like you and I have like hung out like a little bit socially, but like the reason I called you back was because we worked well together. Right. So that's the most valuable part. And I guess like Shaan's a good example of someone who was really prepared, had creative idea of his own, but was still kind of respectful of my authority, or wasn't trying to shove his version or his ideas down my throat, but was there to like give me a menu of options that I could choose from, which is a lot of directing kind of goes that, where a lot of your job is being shown a bunch of things and you have to point at the right thing or the thing that you think is the right way to do it. And that sort of extends to performance a little bit too.
Yeah, performers look to, especially newer performers, they look to the casting director, they look at the director, and they say, tell me how to do it. And it kind of inverts or perverts the relationship, because the casting professionals, the directors, the filmmakers are looking to the actors to show them how this piece could be done and to take direction so it's collaborative. So if it's not exactly what you had in your mind, or this,
the director is the buyer a little bit, and the actor is the seller. It's like, okay, show me what's for sale here. But I can customize the car a little bit, but I'm still getting a Honda Fit. Or like it's not going to be. You don't want to get in a situation where, like this happened once, where we cast a kid for like a really strange specific part, and he was like the strangest, I guess, of the people who auditioned, but he wasn't quite doing it in the way that we had pictured it. So then when he showed up to set, he still was doing it. I mean, you can't just completely change someone, or like this. I think we had it in our head. It's like, oh, well, once you work with him a little more, we can bring him over to like the way you had the character in your head. And it's also it's harder when it's like a 12-year-old kid to like, it's not like that trained of a kid, but it was just But yeah, you don't want to be in a situation where you're like, well, the only real solution here is for this person to be a different person, because we are who we are ultimately, no matter how shapeshiftery an actor you are.
Can you talk about that just a little bit more, especially since you've worked with children a lot, which is actually interesting because your first piece that, like you said, put you on the map with your short, it was not a kid's piece. It was just a very like whimsical, romantic, funny, kind of heartfelt, quest for love type of situation or something. I can imagine why that would appeal to producers of children's programming.
Yeah, there was like an overlap to it, but it wasn't expressly.
Yeah, there was an innocence to it. There
absolutely.
was a wholesomeness to it. So I get that. But so working with children, the people who say I don't need training, for example, often look to like child actors. It's like, well, this kid didn't go through Juilliard or something like that, and they did great or whatever. Can you talk about what you see about children that makes you love working with them, even though they have not been trained, and what you can tell about a child actor who has been trained?
The training isn't always as well. Actually, a severe lack of training can be evident to me, but sometimes there are untrained kids and trained kids who are both equally good. Or there can be trained kids that aren't that good too. So.
Because like with Drew, right, on the show, who played Ranger, like he was newer to acting, whereas Ashley and Sloan had been doing a lot of acting.
That's true.
And there was such a wonderful raw innocence and openness to Drew, right?
For sure. No, and there's no question. He was just like a naturally talented kid, and I'm sure as he grows up and tries different kinds of roles, he'll probably have a different relationship to it, but I'm sure he'll look back at his experience of working on our show and just thinking like, oh, I was just kind of
being myself.
Yeah. Because he was like a witty, funny, cool guy. And then I think he was just good at sort of doing that. No, he was talented. But then his craft really, expanded massively by the end. And I remember during the finale, our DP was Eduardo. I remember him saying, Eduardo, where's the edge of your frame here? Because he had just sort of like understood the craft a little better by the end. It's and this is probably an unpleasant thing for grown-up actors to hear, but something that's very enjoyable for me working on with like talented 12-year-olds is that they are old enough to be very good, but young enough to do whatever you tell them to do. And sometimes you sort of get in the habit of, or like, since I've worked on a lot of kids television where, most of your day is working with only children in the scene. And you're kind of the boss getting everything you need. And then your fifth scene of the day then like the dad or the mom comes in. And then it's like, they're going to have ideas that I have to listen to. They're going to want to do it a certain way. So yeah, I mean, let's face it, it's just a little easier no matter what you're doing if you get your way. So there's always like a weird little gear shift there.
Is there something that adult actors could learn from child actors, in your opinion? Something you see in children that you just are not seeing in adults typically that you would like to?
Don't have ideas.
Other than listen to the director?
Well, there's certainly like just an innocence and openness that kids will, and enthusiasm that has more to do with being a kid than being a kid actor, I guess. I guess all of us can retain some of that as we get older.
Yeah.
That's just, that makes things a little more like pleasant. But in general,
I don't hear kids complaining about waiting around on set for the shots.
No. Well, it's also, I just remember being in junior high myself, like, just like an exciting time anyway, or like whatever little drama's happening with your friends in different parts of your math class or whatever, like, it's just an exciting time. So like 4 kids get on set, like they have no problem just kind of like
kids never know what
excited.
time it is.
Yeah.
Adults are always like, okay, what time is it? What are we going to do now? What's next? Kids just, they're in the moment.
And then kids will even ask like how much longer do we have to do? But they can't even really keep track of it that well. But it is interesting to watch these kids. And this Apple project I worked on, like the 3 of the 4 kids were rather inexperienced. They hadn't had much on-camera experience. They had done theater. so it's been interesting to watch them kind of just learn the craft a little more. Well, it's interesting when you have someone who's gone to Juilliard or whatever, or a less prestigious acting source, someone who studied acting, who's an adult,
Yeah.
and you watch them, what they bring to it, as opposed to a kid who doesn't really have much training, who is just sort of using their instincts a little bit and trying to figure it out. And then sometimes the most elemental things just end up being true. Like, why are you saying what you're saying? Or like, because I think a lot of times the kids are just the memorizing the lines is such a big thing. So they think once they just say all the words in the right way, which is a little hard sometimes for a kid. It's all being written by adults. It's not exactly in their voice. So there's some like trickiness to it. But then sometimes just the question of like, why did you just say that is like, or you find them like having to look at it in a different way and figure, like this series was a mystery series. So there was a lot of like piecing together of clues. And some of those, the way those scenes are written are sometimes a little inauthentic because it's sort of reminding the audience where you are in the mystery. So if grandma said this, blah, 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 and then just trying to figure out how they can fit into that sort of energy and keep it engaging. Because their first instincts were like, sometimes it's like, you're playing it realistically, but it seems like you're not interested in the mystery, which is, I can see how that's probably true. So like, it was just sort of helping them understand like the excitement of a new discovery and kind of, yeah. So there is that sort of pure kind of situation with kids where they're kind of learning lessons for the first time. Which you don't really get to do with older actors, or they have a process at that point.
Yeah. Is that something you probably have to do with? I would assume a lot is like kids being so locked into a line read because they were just running through the lines with their parents or something like that, and then you have to kind of shock them out of it and just get into.
I mean, it's true. Like you can give line readings to kids a lot more easily and with less trouble than. And I try not to do it, but sometimes it's just like you're running behind. Like the kid has to
say it like this,
kind of like it's and nor are they that offended? Or I think it's more like if you give someone a line reading that's like just so counterintuitive or impossible, that's hard. But like if it sort of makes sense to them, then they're like, oh, okay, and then they can kind of do it that way. I think they agree with your reading. That goes a long way. But obviously with actors. With adult actors, it's, I don't know. Sometimes whenever they ask for one, I'm sort of grateful because we can just sort of cut to the chase a little more. Because I find there's like a weird charade about it where it's obvious like I have a delivery in my head, which sometimes I can just sort of like do the broad version of it, so it doesn't seem like I'm mimicking them exactly or something.
If you have a version in your head, but you hear it another way, like. Or that you like, do you ever hear something better than what you hear?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. That definitely happens. Okay. And that's always great.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a line in a script that you've been hearing a very certain way in your head the whole time, and then someone just has a totally kind of different way into it. And then sometimes it's just a taste thing where it's just sort of, I kind of liked how it's, I kind of like my version better. Can we do it my way? And then, if you can and time permits, like they can do it both ways, and then, but they're usually smart enough to know that I will just use the version I like in the editing room.
That's interesting. That that I think there's something to be learned from what you just said. That's pretty cool. That that's a touchy gray area of like not giving an actor a line read or telling them how to do their art. But then we just heard from you that sometimes it's helpful to be able to share what you had in mind and then let the actor at least be open to that suggestion. And so you have that option in the in the edit to like go that way if you wanted to go that way.
Right.
So just being more open to receiving that kind of specificity, even if it's a line read, like who cares? Let the director share what they had in their mind and like take it.
Yeah, it's like the way the actor is giving me ideas, I'm giving them an idea.
Have you found actors who don't like line reads? I remember I worked with an actor named Daniel Benzali, if you know who he is. He's a bald guy. He was on Murder One. He's fantastic, but very difficult. And when you were shooting him, if you would give him, sometimes he would ask for a line read if there was something that people didn't like. And when he would get one, he'd be like, no, my character would never do it like that. So he would solicit line reads so that he could reject those line reads.
Oh, interesting. I have a question regarding like training and credits. So if you see if you see an audition and you love their take on it and you're like, oh, this person is perfect, they don't have any credits. And then you see like another person, they're okay, but they have like a ton of credits, a ton of, you know.
That's a great question.
It's a good question.
What do you,
It never matters to me. Well, I would say if it were for like a lead for a show,
Yeah.
I would maybe be a little more hesitant if the person hadn't done anything. But if it was like a smaller guest star thing, I would be more than happy to give. I just want to hire the best person.
okay.
Or that's my. I heard a David Chase interview where they were asking him about, it was so bold to cast Gandolfini as he was an unconventional looking lead for a show. Did you really want like kind of a balding, like heavier guy? And he was like, honestly, I just try to pick the best actor. If it had been like an incredibly handsome Cary Grant looking person and he was the best actor, I would have hired him. So I try not to get caught up in looks too much at all. And I just am trying to look at who I think was, I'm shown 5 things, 7 things, and I just want to point at the one that I think is the best and that fits for what the overall picture. And does fit into the cast, doesn't duplicate double up other instruments or voices we have in the ensemble. And yeah, I just want to pick that person, and the credits usually don't matter that much to me.
That's one of the things I tell actors all the time is that it is a meritocracy. You know, if it was all about who you knew, then everybody on every show would be someone's friend, brother, sister, dad, this, that. But there are always new people that are showing up and doing professional work because they put the work in and they were the right person for that project.
I think it starts as a meritocracy. I think someone like you, or that sort of wasn't a meritocracy when it was a little inside baseball because I knew I wanted to get you for that other parts. But that's because you had sort of proven yourself to me in that earlier thing.
That's what I mean. It isn't like every single role, it only goes, it's like once you've established yourself as a professional, people offer you things, and that's good. That means that you've demonstrated your professionalism, your artistry to the point that people can already see you doing certain things. So
Sure.
That's where we all want to get to. We were all waiting for the day where we get offer-only type of things, and then the challenge becomes, what project do I do and take on that's going to reflect well on me, that's going to move my career down the line, that kind of
stretch
thing.
you, sure,
You know, but it's so much more about the art than people think it is, even though it seems obvious, but actors are so concerned with so many things that aren't the quality of the art.
Well, I think also for actors, especially actors just starting out who are just auditioning all the time, it's all auditions. So it doesn't, like, you don't end up working as much as you think you should, so you don't actually get the time to do the art that much. So then it doesn't feel like you're, like, it only just feels like this.
See, and I turn that around, and I say that 95% of what we do is auditioning for projects and preparing for projects that we'll never book.
And
so
that's just your
the
job.
That is the job. And occasionally we get hired and we get to do it on set, but our job is to create amazing art that will probably not get us hired in on so many projects.
That's like when I'm developing TV shows and I come up with a great pitch that just ends up only being seen by a couple execs and doesn't get bought.
But didn't it feel good, though, in the moment?
It does, yeah. No, I usually do drive home. No, a good audition, and even just my 2 auditions a year. When I do a good job, I do. It does feel nice to do a good job.
Right. So I
think that's a great attitude or a great way to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, 95% of anything would be pretty much the thing. If you found a dollar bill and a little piece of it was torn off, you'd still keep the whole bill.
Right.
Like, so our job is to be professional preparers and auditioners, and occasionally we get to do it on set. And if we're really fortunate, we get to do it on set a lot because we're a significant part of the story.
Right.
And so, so that I can understand why it would stress actors out that there's like, oh man, I haven't done my work in a while. I've just been auditioning a lot, but it's like, that is your work.
Well, like sometimes, like personally, if I audition for a part and I don't get it, I'll go and see who got it, and I'll go, oh wow, well they had a lot of credits. That's probably why. But got to get out of that mindset.
Yeah, totally. You can't compare yourself to other people.
Well, and I think there's sort of no. I remember I auditioned for there was a show, Man Seeking Woman. Have you ever seen that? It's on FXX. But I was like auditioned for the lead for that. This was like shortly after the Oscars. And then they ended up hiring Jay Baruchel, who was sort of like my celebrity lookalike guy a little bit. Then I watched that, I'm like, all right, I mean, I see what they do.
Well, this ties back to kind of the second part of my earlier couple comments, which was the wanting to avoid casting if possible. But the second thing is, another thing that I've noticed from doing the castings that I've done is if somebody is not only prepared, Like they come in, they do a great job, they take pride in their art, whatever. That's awesome. I'll definitely want to work with them in the future. But if somebody goes beyond that and is there early, helping set up, like being helpful, super like taking care of other people, doing little things to show that they care, last ones to leave, like not in a rush, whatever. If somebody is not only a great artist, but they're a great person, then they, to me, jump to the top of the list.
It certainly never hurts.
Yeah.
Even if you're a bad artist and you're a great person, that still helps. Or it's like, I mean, yeah, it took a little longer to get there, but she was so nice and like got along with the crew. So
or it makes the day better for everybody because some personalities just uplift everyone's spirits on
yeah,
set.
I mean, we're artists, but we're also professionals. I mean, we have like workplaces that we have to be in all day, and and a pleasant place to work is desirable. So like the more you can add to that, like it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. Or you have to be so good. It's where there's like good and nice, good and not nice, bad and nice, and
Bad and bad.
bad and not nice.
Yeah.
So bad and not nice, you're just not going to work.
Yeah.
Bad and nice, there's some, or like, depending, they can maybe make that work.
Mm-hmm.
Good and nice is the best possible thing.
Uh-huh.
For a director, good and not nice is very hard for me because I don't have as much leverage. Like if they're messing up a lot, then I can like correct them. But if they're like pretty good and they're being jerks, I mean, you sort of have to just take it.
Yeah.
And then hope I don't have to work with them again.
Well, and the actors, I think, underestimate, because I think we can be so self-focused, how much our attitude on set can either uplift or adversely affect the set environment, right? Like we talk about how like the leads of the show set the tone for the entire experience. Like the number one on the call sheet, everybody follows their lead. If they're weird, then everybody's weird. If they're super sweet, everybody's sweet.
Yeah, well, Gordimer was a good example where Sloan was like the sweetest kid ever, and then and everyone was in line with that.
Yeah.
And I've learned that too, just directing wise. It was the first feature I worked on, and I was just out of film school. I had so little experience, but I remember my AD, like, we were in prep and I was kind of running around. We were late for meetings or whatever, and she was like, "You seem stressed," and I was like, "Oh." It just didn't even occur to me that I was like coming off that way, and it wasn't like a particularly stressful thing, but it was a good realization for me because I was like, "Oh, people are picking up on this." So like you have to kind of guard how you're coming off to people, and because if I seem stressed out or frantic, there's a ripple effects to that. Whereas like if I seem like a little cooler and things are in control, then that's good. So then when I do panic a little bit, then it means something, or you know. So yeah, and then I think when you say that, like number one and number two in the call sheet, like sort of the more powerful people on set, their personalities impact the day for everybody else. And sometimes one like tough bad actor can ruin or make it unpleasant for everybody. My wife is a very successful first AD, and she's definitely seen how just like one actor who's making it difficult for everyone just makes it it's a terrible place to work. And then the days that actor isn't working, it's suddenly like
the sun has come out.
Yeah, it's pleasant.
Well, I worked on a show where the showrunner kept writing less and less dialogue for one of the lead characters because he was so difficult. And when he was approached with that, he said, "Well, if you were a little easier to work with, I'd write more dialogue for you." So Sean Cassidy did that.
Oh, interesting. So another question that I had. So we talked about what's nice about working with kids versus adults. Let's talk about the opposite. So what is it that you love about working with adults that you don't get from working with children?
Oh, well, and this is probably from the perspective of someone who's been doing lots of kids TV, where I'm just like, wow, they knew their lines and everything. Like, sometimes the bar becomes sort of low, where you're like, oh, they just were not confused at all about what they were saying. So then sometimes for me, this last show I was working on, it was one of those things where there was an adult who came in at the end of so I had sort of made fun of it, like then the grown-up actors have their own ideas, and that can be a little frustrating, but that's more of a joke. That actually tends not to be that true. But I remember the very seasoned older woman came in at the end of the day, and I was just like at the monitor watching her take, and I was just still in the kind of the mindset of having worked with the kids all day, where I just hear her, I'm like, oh, she got that line right. She got that line right. Oh, and I'm like, wait. She's a professional. She's gonna get all the lines right. That's not the issue. Come on, grow up. You're dealing with a professional actor. Yeah. I mean, the most pleasurable thing of all is like when they just kind of the actor sort of gets it right, and then you have like a little suggestion or something that they either like or they build off of, and when it's a real collaboration, it's nice.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also working with. I mean, sorry for listeners, this is obviously a lot more like kids show kind of stuff than maybe you bargained for.
No, I love
That's
this.
great.
This is
Great.
But the nice thing about kids shows too is that adult actors, I think, kind of understand that the kids are going to require a lot of the attention.
Mm-hmm.
So that puts a little of the onus on them to like, you should have your shit together.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's like, I'm just not going to have so much time for you.
Mm-hmm.
You're not the child here.
Yeah. Or like, if I spend as much time with you as I am with like this kid, we're going to lose the day.
So then what is your advice to an actor who's on a project with a child, a feature or a television show, to better interact and work with them as a fellow actor? You're an adult actor, you're studied, you're seasoned, and you're working with this child. How can actors be better working with children?
I think kids can see through someone who's trying a little too hard to like chum around. I think some people are just naturally good with kids, and that doesn't hurt. And if you're even not naturally good with kids, I think at least as long as you're polite and nice, like that just goes a long way. I don't think you have to try to, toss a frisbee with them at lunch or anything, or go out of your way. But I think you can't treat them so much different than you would treat adult actors, or just use your best judgment. I mean, it's true if like, I don't know, if you're kind of an annoying weird person, then the kids will pick up on that more. Well, yeah, more so than like I think adults would maybe just kind of tolerate a weird personality or a difficult personality, whereas I think kids don't try to disguise their feelings as much. But yeah, I would say be nice, and then just remember, they're kind of self-absorbed 12-year-olds, and they're not gonna. If they don't really pay that much attention to you, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like they have, and it's weird with these kid actors. Like they have whatever's going on in their own lives. They have this day of work. They're in school all day. When I was in school, I was just in school, or like it was enough just to like I have a chemistry test or whatever at 10, and like that. Whereas like they have their chemistry test, then they have to go do a scene that might be the most important scene of the season. Which adult actors can just stay in their trailer and just work on their stuff all day. Like so, it is an unusual setup for children, and I think being polite, respectful, and a pleasant person is, and someone who isn't. I was going to say someone who isn't slowing things down, but then sometimes it is sort of helpful. Or like there was an older actor who did have trouble with lines a lot, but he was very professional about it. Or if he messed up his lines, he would just quietly go back to the beginning and take it again. Whereas like these kid actors I've just been working with, they that was something they had trouble learning, where they would mess up and then they would and they would make a big deal about it and then start apologizing and like being a little theatrical about a mistake. So sometimes it was nice for them to, or I found it helpful for them to see like a professional mess up, and then he just taking it back. And I'm like, okay, in your own time and action. And then it's just like, all right, see, because your experience doesn't mean you're perfect at the job or you're going to get it right every single time. It just means you can get back up on the horse a lot faster, or like effortlessly, really. Like mistakes are part of the job, and he just knows how to keep going. Whereas like kids can be, especially the kind of like motivated kid who gets into acting, can be maybe a little bit of a perfectionist and like be really hard on themselves sometimes. And that's when it gets, you know, a 40-year-old person being really hard on themselves. I'm like, fine, we're adults here, but then you're always sort of worried about like a 12-year-old taking it too seriously, and
Yeah.
and they can tell, you know, if. And I think the worst case for an actor, no matter who you are, is like if you're really having trouble with a line and the whole thing, you do have the power to have the whole production screech to a halt until you get this line right, and that is like, there's no question, that's a terrible feeling.
Yeah. If you felt pressure before, you'll feel a lot of pressure when you're holding up the whole.
Well, I've seen this happen in a number of productions where it's like, no matter who it was, it's like every single person on set would just be able to say the line. But there's been some kind of short-circuiting cognitive thing. It doesn't have to do with a lack of effort or a lack of passion. It's just the machine is busted for a second here.
Yeah, the camera's on you, all the attention's on you. It's like it no matter how well your brain works, as soon as you have all of that attention, I think it might even be some kind of like, I don't know, like some kind of energetic thing where the more eyeballs that are on you, the more you're affected by being observed or something.
And there's no question, if it's like you just woke up after a good night's sleep the next morning, you would be able to instantly say the line with no problem whatsoever. But like sometimes, yeah, I mean, or just the not getting it right can be stressful for an adult. And then it's just like, that always breaks my heart a little bit when you see a kid in that position.
Do you see adults and children downward spiral equally, or do you feel like kids are more forgiving of themselves in the moment, or adults are more forgiving of themselves in the moment?
It depends on the disposition of the person.
Yeah, so it's pretty equal. Just depends on the person.
People are people, yeah. I think it. I mean, I think maybe kids will forget about. Well, you never know. No, I think kids hold on to it too, or like they feel a little bad about it. But yeah, we had one day where one of the kids was in that sort of situation kind of earlier in the day. You could tell he went to lunch and he felt bad about it. But then he kind of kicked ass like at the end of the day, and we had kind of a group huddle, and we were like, all right, we all know what happened to him earlier. This is something that's going to happen. But, you know, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. We finished this day, and everyone did a great job by the end of it, and you were all there for each other, and that's the important thing, and that's what we have to keep doing for each other. And I think that was sort of valuable for them. Because I think it's you know, because the kids become friends with each other, they don't want to see that. That was, yeah, that was the one accidental like disaster, that the kid who was having trouble with his line. It was like something like, that's why I was so drawn to acting. I knew I had something special in me, or like that was like the line, and he just couldn't say it. And then his buddy next to him was like, he just like said the line. It's like just say. I knew I had something special in me. And like he just said the line perfectly, and I was like, don't do that right in front of the guy. And then because he was obviously just trying to help him, but then it was it just was salt in the wound.
Do you see that, because you know, over the 8 years that you've been out here and working on projects, the prevalence of like touchscreen and like iPads and iPhones and things like that has just exploded, and children have these things now. Have you noticed these types of mobile devices impacting the kids on set in between takes or anything like that, you know, over these years?
Not really, actually. Or I would say, if everyone gathers around a phone to watch like a YouTube thing or something, it's usually kind of fun, or like it's.
So you haven't seen mobile devices adversely affect.
It hasn't really hijacked the process.
How about social media?
Usually parents are in charge of their accounts, right?
Yeah.
If they have an account at all.
The I don't know too much about it, actually.
Good.
I mean,
so you haven't had any horror stories of like, you know, people posting something on social media from set that was like not okay or things like that?
Not a horror story for
Good.
sure.
All right, good. That's
I have a social media. I have found increasingly that I have ended up on shows where influencers are cast.
Ugh.
Have you found this to be the case?
I did work on a show that was built around an influencer.
Yes, well, I mean, like Studio 71 does stuff like that, and
it was a YouTube
Awesomeness TV does. I did a project for YouTube Red for Studio 71. What is your advice to the influencer who finds themselves in an actor's position?
Well, that's an unusual position. So I worked on the show, me and my grandma. It was with an influencer named Ava Gutowski. And she had was very successful as an influencer, which was a one-man band kind of job where she had sort of single-handedly kind of created this multi-million follower situation on her own, using her own instincts, usually just with a couple other people or maybe just even herself. And then, she was enticed to do this like a relatively conventional TV show where Rhea Perlman was her grandma, and everything that's involved in that is just so different from this other thing that she was doing, which was sort of what made her famous and what was, I think, for her like main job and her main priority, which makes sense. So I think it was just getting used to what was a 1, 2, or 3 person operation is now this like 100-person thing, or even more than that, of just sort of getting the lay of the land as quick as you can. And that's also, it's not like influencers, like they don't often like work with that many people. Like they're sort of alone. So it wasn't like she had these like
social skills,
or just finally, or like so many like working relationships.
But isn't
like,
that ironic for someone whose career is social media?
Yeah.
and they don't have much social
The social
interaction.
skills aren't there.
But I've noticed a lot of them have been getting their own like Netflix shows.
Oh, that's what. So Studio 71 is a management company. They manage influencers, but they also pair them with Hollywood people for scripted projects. So I
Right.
mean that's because the studios can monetize that following, and so they know
Sure.
that they will have this many downloads, this many clicks, this many impressions. I think that's the term they use now, impressions.
Well, and I'm sure on that front, it's not even necessary that the art be that great. It'll draw enough of their follower base to come to, say, Amazon. That's
certainly the
Amazon
business model, or what they would
you know?
hope for, is
Yeah.
that like, oh, this person has 9 million followers, so some of those will come over.
Yeah.
I do find that a lot with commercial and print auditions that they're asking for, like my Instagram account, like how many followers I have, not theatrically.
Oh, interesting.
But
Have you found that in casting? Have you found studios
That hasn't affected me.
encouraging you to no?
Most of theatrical casting doesn't really
the
care.
Me and My Grandma thing, the YouTube, it was just built around her, so like that sort of happened before I got on there.
We're not-
And actually for that show they were trying to get other influencers here and there in the thing, but that was such a like the star of the show was an influencer, so that was just sort of what it was. And she was it's interesting, like the things that got her success certainly helped, or like she was a hard worker, that wasn't an issue. And her like YouTube presence is sort of funny, so she was actually a pretty talented comedian. And then for the sort of heavier acting scenes, I think we had an acting coach for her who helped out, and then Rhea Perlman, who was a very seasoned actress, was acting opposite and was like incredibly generous and patient and like helpful to her. So everyone wants the whole thing to succeed.
Yeah.
So it's like same thing with these kids on the show that I just worked with at Apple. They didn't have that much experience at the beginning, but then we brought in acting coaches and we try to, you want it to work, or it has to work. Like no one benefits from it falling on its face.
One more thing before we move off of like the kids show stuff, which is like, can you talk about stage parents or about the parents of the kids and the impact that they have on set?
I've heard much more horror stories than I've actually experienced them, or I think the reputation tends to be a little worse. And maybe where I am in the food chain, it hasn't like impersonally impacted me, or it's gone either above me or below me or something. But and like a director lives in a bubble a little bit, or so does the showrunner. People maybe don't bring their problems right to you, so sometimes I don't like experience it as closely. But I tend to find them being as pleasant as they can in an extremely boring situation because they have to just sit there all day with the kids.
Yeah.
It's rare that I've seen kind of like cattiness or.
Well, what can a parent do to be helpful on set?
I honestly don't. Just to say a few friendly words at lunch is fine. Like it's a busy day for me. I don't.
Not even with you, just with their kids. Like, how can they help their kids in between setups and takes and things?
I think it depends on the kid. I think if the kid's pretty self-sufficient, if the kid needs attention, has attention span issues, like they need to be on top of that and make sure that that the kid's getting the job done. But it tends to. I mean, there's like people on the AD staff who are working with the kids, so there's not like that much interaction with the parents, honestly.
Yeah.
Do you have a great example of child casting, not a show that you've produced or directed, but when you look at what's out there now, you think, hey, this show really did a great job casting those kids or that child or that lead? Is there a great example out there for people?
Well, that movie, the Florida Project, that girl in that was the. Oh, she's actually starring in another Apple show that's coming out. But I think that was like a nationwide search, and that filmmaker's style, I think, really permitted that kid's actual personality to come across in a very like kind of high octane, like clean way.
She's great.
So yeah, I mean that was an amazing child performance. Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like an average good child performance feels like, oh, the kid was pretty good, or like, but then a great child performance, it feels like how there's always like, how did that even happen? How did they do that?
Stranger Things.
Yeah, and
Or
I think
Looper.
I would even say
the
that
kid in Looper was insane.
oh yeah, that was crazy, man. And the Stranger Things kids, I would say they've gotten much better, or like the first season, because they didn't have that much experience, but
Like Matthew McConaughey, they learn on the job.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
well you have to.
So we met through an amazing casting director team, Alexis and Christine and
Yeah.
Amanda, right? Can you talk about your relationship with the casting director?
Sure.
Like what you count on the casting director for and how you love to work with them?
It's interesting. There's the constellation of different departments you're working with. So like the production design department is usually like very close to your office, and you're seeing the production designer a lot and in close conversation. Whereas the casting department, if you're a director or showrunner, is sort of like mainly email. You're just getting like emails here and there existing. It's more the kind of thing where you notice it more if it's not working well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like an easy thing to take for granted. The tricky parts, or like the parts you end up realizing what you should have done differently, was like not giving enough specific information about what you wanted for each character, or like the way these like breakdowns are like worded end up being like one adjective can sort of throw off the whole thing, or like what does surly mean, or something, or what does quirky. Well, quirky is its own, like, who knows like what that means. So sometimes, and if they're smart, talented, which Alexis and Christine obviously are, they sort of get the idea. And once or twice a season they would come into our office and we would just sort of talk broadly about bigger tonal things of the show. And I basically just put it in their hands and, okay, go find the people for me, and I will look at the link that you send me, and I will be in touch. There is or it tends to be like in this link of 10 names that you'll get. You could see like the first couple will be the ones that they obviously were rooting for a little bit, even though they don't really usually like come out and say it, but you can tell that they have like favorites too.
Did that ever weigh into your decision making?
A little bit. I don't think it wasn't like I would just click on their pick and just say, all right, cast that one. But like, it might make me take a second look if I wasn't to see if like I missed something. And to be honest, like I would say like casting isn't even really my strength per se, or like I have been overruled, or I have had a pick that I thought was really good that everyone else was like, this is a terrible idea, and then it got vetoed, and then like the person that they picked was like, yeah, that was pretty good.
What has your largest casting challenge been in your career?
The largest casting challenge. Well, I worked on like this indie movie that I got right out of film school, which was just more illuminating about like how an indie film works in terms of
how does it work compared to a studio film?
Well, I haven't worked on a studio film, or just point being where there's like not that much money involved. Like the idea that you're going to get your first choice, it just won't like happen. So like this Bill Hader, I was still on SNL, and I was like, oh, this guy would be great for this indie film. And then it's like, then he passes. Then you got to Joel McHale. Then you got to Ty Burrell. And then it ended up being between Matt LeBlanc and Jason Biggs, who are both great, who I liked meeting both of them. But it was just interesting because what they each brought to the table was just so different from the original kind of conception of the character.
Oh, I saw your film with Matt LeBlanc.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Lovesick?
Yeah, I saw it.
Oh, wow.
Newport Beach Film Festival.
Oh, yeah. That's crazy that you saw it there. So that was the one. And I guess that was, in retrospect, that was the kind of thing where, like, I guess I just didn't quite know how it worked, or like what I was getting into. I guess it wasn't so much a challenge as realizing, like, sometimes the decision isn't mine.
Mm-hmm.
Which isn't to say, like, I didn't like working with Matt LeBlanc. It was more like he wanted to do it. He was easily the best of the options that were available to us. So then he gets the part, and he was like an utter pleasure to work with. But I think in retrospect, it's more like we probably could have done more to shape the character a little more to his specific gifts that he brings to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually was a nice collaboration. So that was sort of its own thing casting wise. And then the other thing, frankly, so Gordimer was this Amazon Kids show that I worked on that I was very proud of, and the 3 kids were amazing and I love them. But in retrospect, I do wish it hadn't been 3 white kids. You sort of can't, I mean, which isn't to say I would trade any of them specifically or whatever, because I love them all. But it was sort of this like idealized suburban kind of thing that, and this is a couple years ago now. I think maybe this is a little more top of mind in the last couple years than maybe it had been when I first started. But I think the representation is it's something that needs to like play into the process a little more. That I think maybe at the time I was like, these are the 3 best kids. That's that. They got the part. Whereas I think if you are going for more diverse casting, like, you just have to take a little more time.
I have a question about.
Series,
go ahead. I'm
a lot
sorry.
of the other series regulars and recurring guests and all that were very diverse.
Yeah, but I think that's always
Coco
this sort of,
and Chandler, and I'm thinking of, and even what's the girl that now is in the Star Wars films that worked with us?
Oh yeah, Kelly Marie Tran.
Yeah,
That's true. But I think that's also the it's slightly cop-outy. I think one of the leads really has to be, and Chandler was like probably the 5th lead or something like that. Which isn't nothing, but it's like of the main cast, you have to. To me, that was sort of the sin, that it was the 3 main kids that we're saying this is the 3 kid friendship that everyone can relate to. The fact that it was 3 white kids, and again,
was that following David's initial vision for that? Is that what that was, or is that?
I think it was just pretty early in the process at Amazon.
Because that was the first show they'd ever made from their original.
It was one of the first live action ones, and I think diversity was a part of the conversation, but it wasn't as big a part of the conversation that it has been in the last couple of years.
I have a diversity in casting question. When you're casting a role that, as you said, the guy who hands off the keys, or how often are you seeing ethnically diverse people for the same role, and how often do you see different genders for the same role where it could be played either way, where it's not crucial to the character?
That's a good question. To your first question, yeah, I mean, you often get the things that I've worked on. It's usually a pretty diverse mix. Gender tends to have it has to be a pretty small character, I think, for it not to be too specific. So yeah, the gender usually seems relatively fixed.
Except for like maybe some small co-star parts where it's like, who cares if the waiter is a
Otherwise, you end up with the movie
waitress
Salt.
Yeah.
Right.
Written for a man.
I had one of my favorite days I've ever had as an actor on set on Gordimer Gibbons with you guys. And I don't know if you remember this day. Well, I'm sure you'll remember it, but I don't know that.
It was when you had your chili rash?
No, not like that.
That was awesome.
But that was my first guest star on a network show, so that was amazing. But my favorite day on set, apart from the day that I think I set the record for the longest time waiting between when I was when I was called in the morning and when I was eventually brought to set, which was, I think, the Mystery of Marlowe Mansion, where I was waiting for till like 10:30 at night before we finally got me up to do some of my stuff.
Wow. That was a good episode.
It was a good
episode.
Oh, it was so much fun. No, but my favorite day was all about when it was Ranger, and when he was overwhelmed with the weight of the world, right? Like he was helping all his friends, and then they go to me in my store, and I had this like page and a half of non sequiturs.
Oh, that's right.
And
yeah,
I was like,
it
how
was
am I-
like you had to tell a long, pointless story. That was basically the point
Right.
of the scene.
And
Yeah,
you guys had written these like random things that we would jump cut between.
right.
And I was like, how am I going to prepare for this? So I'm like, well, I've got to write the whole thing. I've got to basically be clear on how all of these
And
things.
all of his different lines were like admitted nonsense. Like like it didn't make any sense. And then he comes in with the whole like several page like explanation of what the story actually was, which ended up giving us a lot of. I mean, it was like an embarrassment of riches in the cutting room. Like we had so many crazy things that he said the whole time.
And that was so. It was wonderful because, you know what? And I brought like the pages for you guys, and I said, here's just what I had to do to like know what I was saying. Use whatever you want, cut whatever you want. We can do it as one long monologue, or we can just lead in and then cut out afterwards. And it was received with so much positive energy. We had
Well, that's just a good example of like, we're coming up with this in the writer's room of like, let's do something where he has to tell this long, stupid story. I don't want to hear the whole story, but we'll just hear little parts of it. And then it's like Shaan just on his own did all this other work. It was just so funny and such a good sport about the whole thing. It's like, this is awesome. So it's like, it doesn't slow anything down. So we were happy to like have him run with it.
Yeah. And so anyway, then the kids were so like, we'd still joke about it when I see those guys.
Yeah,
like,
they kept cracking up.
Yeah. It was just a really fun experience. So and it's a lesson for actors too, that, you come with your own work so that you know what you're saying and all that, and be open to whether it'll be used or not. But ultimately, if you watch the episode, you can see that there's a through line to the performance, even if he's saying all this nonsense,
Right.
because I had made it clear for myself.
Mm-hmm. There was something, one of the few parts I had on TV. I worked on this show called Dangerous Book for Boys, which I directed 2 of the episodes, but Greg Mottola directed the first 2. And I was able to get myself secure the part of Mr. Tree, the middle school math teacher guy. And I think this is something that helped me as a director know how I could help him a little more, which was the teacher scene in a lot of our classroom scene. They all tend to be like a little unrealistic because there's like conversations happening among students like during the class, which it doesn't really like work like that in real life, but that's just how like TV works. I think there was some kind of nervousness. The main kid was like looking at a girl or something. And I just remember thinking like, they're going to need some kind of audio for the teacher the whole time during this. So then I just sort of taught myself, it was some kind of parallel axis triangle kind of lesson, or I basically looked up like what you would talk about in this, and I basically just kind of wrote the lesson.
Mm-hmm.
So then I was just like, Greg, listen, would it be helpful if I just kind of did this the whole time? And you could tell like, oh, he was like, oh yeah, that's great, do that. Which was, a director has so many things to worry about.
That's your sound supervisor's job to pick that up after the fact. When you're in a classroom and the teacher's off camera, your sound supervisor's job is we need dialogue to fill the teacher off camera, or the politician who's still making the speech. So that we bring people in all the time on the back end, even leads to get all that
make
kind
up
of
for that
all the time.
Yeah.
And writers oftentimes don't think about it on set. I think sometimes just is overlooked.
And I think that was just an easy way to like get ahead of that, or like just make less work later on.
It reminds me of what you talked about with the person taping, posters on the pole, right? And wanting to test that out so that it's not frustrating for the actor. Well, for me, the idea behind, the story about the non sequitur monologue and then you sharing this is that, someone's got to think about that. Someone's got to make that so that that's not, that didn't get missed. And this is an actor's opportunity to make your day a little bit easier by having figured that out. All right, this is what's in the script. Let me figure it out. And that way,
there are like 30,000 decisions that need to be made anyway.
Yeah.
So like, if there are a couple that you can help knock off the list, have at it.
Right.
It's just going to make things easier, especially if it's fun and not that hard to do. Like a little help goes a long way.
Well, so I want to go back to a question that that Jack brought in. By the way, the voice of God that you're hearing once in a while is Jack, everybody.
Hello.
So, all right, the producer and creator of this podcast. And so, is the idea of how actors or people can build meaningful relationships that can help get them job opportunities instead of just waiting for the phone to ring or whatever. Because actors are constantly stressed out about how to network, quote unquote, and how to, and not as if it's only the actor's, plight to network. Everybody who's in this business has to build their working relationships. And
I think actors have it worse though, or there's something about like I have representation. If I come up with a TV show idea and want to go pitch it, and my reps, like they can make those things happen, so I can get in rooms and talk with people. So it's like it's not really networking related. Like it's already set up. Whereas like I can see how if you're just in a slow or point B, I can always go like write something or like start developing material on my own, and that's something I can always do. What like an actor, it's not like you can just wake up and just start acting. So I can see like, I have to prove to myself I'm taking this seriously, so I need to like relentlessly network. And I don't know how much good it does. Or well, I don't know. You never know. Like it's always. I guess it's maybe how you were talking about 90% of the job is auditioning. Like maybe 90% of the people you network with will be a waste of time or didn't really help, but maybe every now and then it helps out. But
well,
it can be dispiriting, I think.
There's I describe it to actors like there's 4 paths to success and 4 paths that are independent from one another. You can become successful, and I describe success as making a living with your art.
Sure.
That there's 4 paths that are within our control. Number 1 is what we would just call I call the traditional way. Just get an agent, get a manager, go out there, audition, and hope to book bigger and bigger stuff and grow your career. So that's one thing that everybody knows how to do. It's pretty linear, right? Like I learn how to act, I get a team, I go on auditions, I book jobs, and it creates momentum and stuff moves forward. So that's clear for everybody. But the second one is building industry relationships, because if you really develop and nurture relationships with writers, directors, showrunners, producers, things like that, even if you don't have a team, you can start to be involved in projects. They can write parts for you. They can build projects around you. So that's a second path. The third one is to create your own content. So even if you don't know any other people and you don't have a team, if you create really compelling content, then that can take on a life of its own and people can come to you, which is kind of what you did with your short film.
In a way. That was, that's true.
And of course, the fourth one is social media, where you can not just become an influencer by having a ton of followers, but even if you only have 1,000 or 2,000 followers, but people can see you're very into martial arts or horseback riding, or you really
a specific niche that you could.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it makes me think of like the beautiful animation sequences in Gordimer Gibbons, where every episode had this like different artistic way of telling part of this story through an animation. It's like every episode is a different type of art. So it's like introducing kids to all these different.
And that was what you're talking about. That's how the production designer would track down those different artists. It was like, we know we're going to need some kind of like oil painting come to life thing. And then after a little Google searching, then they found those artists, and there you go. So,
beautiful.
Yeah, so there might be a similar hashtag equivalent of that, of like a certain kind of Instagram personality that maybe you're looking for that would be searchable.
Yeah.
That has never entered into my kind of casting process. I'm sort of in the deciding realm of in that sort of traditional way that you use it. Like I'm the one who gets the link of someone who had a casting director talk to an agent somewhere, and that's what I end up seeing.
Yeah. How often do you not get a link of options because someone has already made a decision about who is going to get that part? So how many times?
Well, on Marin, the things were written for specific comedians, so like that was just what it was. Or,
but like if a producer wanted to help a friend by getting them their first co-star credit or
sure.
Not very frequently, looks like.
Not that often, no.
Yeah. I guess it's hard too because there's so many decision makers in the process that if somebody was just trying to do a solid for a friend, it would stick out and they'd have to defend it to a whole team.
But it happens. I remember like the number 2 on Gordimer, he helped a woman who had been a nanny for his kids, and she had been acting. Like he got her an audition. Well, most people can get friends auditions. That's almost always fine. And then like Christina and Alexis, those casting directors, they will, if you send that name onto them, they will track down the person and get them to self-tape or bring them in. so yeah, that happens often.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like this person's going to get the part, everyone else needs to audition for something else. Like that's pretty rare.
Yeah. See, and that should be really reassuring for people listening to this, is the idea that, again, it's just your art will be seen. If it's good, it'll make it to that final stage. And then the decisions that are being made are made on who's going to serve the story, you know?
Largely, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you think that being an influencer could be a bad thing for your career as well?
Ooh, that's
Do you think
interesting.
that could also put
I
you
would say
in a box?
it's and I did have a positive experience working with Ava Gutowski on Me and My Grandma, but like that it doesn't excite me as a director to see that someone's an influencer per se, unless I know that that person also had some acting experience, or because my job is to like make sure the performances are good.
Right.
So like and sometimes like there was this woman Gigi Gorgeous. She was like an influencer. She had a small part in Me and My Grandma, and she wasn't the most like trained actor, but she obviously had like a real star quality. So she was like pretty good. Or she did a good job. Or it was a small enough part that you could just go in there and do it. But otherwise, it's like from my end, it sort of feels sometimes it's like the bluntness of the business model is there. It's like, oh, this person has 15 million followers. You got to get them on there. And it just feels like we were getting so far away from hiring the best person, which can be a little frustrating for me. I mean, obviously it's good if a show gets attention or something. And then obviously sometimes they just surprise you. Like actors I find to be like the most diverse bunch of all, or like there are kinds of people who become cinematographers or production designers or sound designers or things like that. Whereas I do find like there are actors who are incredibly smart, and actors who are really dumb, actors who are really mean or really nice, or like it actually is a pretty big mix. And then they surprise you in different ways, in ways that it's just like costumers I find very similar to each other, or they're just similar. Like all bets are off for actors, I think, which is what's exciting about it.
Yeah.
And that does allow an influencer to surprise you. But then
I don't think anybody confuses influencer with actor, but I think that
Right.
people who don't know our industry, just like, oh, they're in front of a camera, they're talking.
Well,
Like,
you know, there's a movement at the Screen Actors Guild to unionize influencers.
yeah, the SAG-AFTRA has been looking into organizing influencers because so much advertising money is going towards influencers as well, and these influencers are getting paid in like product, or you can't pay your health insurance premiums with product. You can't. That's not building a pension or some kind of retirement or something. So it's a lot of influencers. There's no standard compensation model that protects them if this is their career. So it's like, how can we protect these people that are in front of a camera in a way that sets them up for longevity and success? So that's the thinking. But they're not. We're not confused about whether we don't confuse them all as on-camera actors.
Right.
It's just another kind of on-camera performer.
That's true.
So
But they would then be SAG eligible to go to any casting call that any SAG member is allowed to go to.
sure,
correct?
yeah. I mean, technically, any SAG-AFTRA member, even if they're a broadcaster, could go on any, on any kind of union audition. Or not that like auditions are only for union performers, because lots of non-union people are brought in to audition for union jobs. That's how they get their eligibility and get booked and like move in to getting their union eligibility.
Have you done that? Have you Taft-Hartley'd someone? Have you brought someone in because you just weren't finding the talent you wanted?
Would you even know? Isn't that something?
Because
that's
I'm
taken
not
care of
in
by
SAG,
production?
and I would like to be Taft-Hartley'd. If you haven't done it, we can work something out.
Understood. No, that tended to be more like Otto, the AD. We wanted to give him a little part.
Yeah,
and then that kind of thing.
Oh, Otto, that's awesome. What is one of the most underrated positions on set?
The AD.
Yeah. Can you describe
the second AD?
Can you describe for people the difference between the first and second AD?
Sure. And my wife's the first AD, so I apologize if I'm getting some of the details. But so the first AD is sort of handed the script, told they have 6 days of shooting to make this all work in. They have to do all the scheduling of how this document is then going to be turned into an actual production. is coordinating all these different department meetings between the director and everyone else, and then on the day when they shoot, then they have to keep everything moving, troubleshoot all the different the myriad problems that could come up during a day, and from weather, from an actor being sick, from someone being late in traffic, from just all the many things that can be delayed, and then they have to figure out how to rearrange a scene, or like, okay, well, let's move this tomorrow's work to today if we can get this costume changed. So there's just so much time sensitive, difficult things, stunts, or like just lots of things to coordinate that all goes through their brain, which is a real administrative feat. And is I sometimes think of the first AD as like the mom of the set, in the way that it's like the most work, the most thankless too, or like the most unheralded as well. And if it was badly AD'd, the whole thing would just screech to a halt. So there's that, but then at least the first AD is a sort of a higher profile person on set, and people tend to know, always know who that is. The second AD is the person who's back in the trailer, basically getting all the infrastructure together of like call sheets and figuring out, coordinating actor schedules and all this logistical behind the scenes stuff that or like my wife and I have talked about how, like, as a director, I'm in the bubble sometimes and everyone's usually pretty nice to me. Whereas like no one's like, don't say that around the second AD, don't hurt the second AD's feel. So like the second AD usually sees how bad or how annoying the actors actually are, because actors will not be annoying, or will even Chevy Chase, who I would sort of complained about earlier, was kind of nice to me, or like it's but no one, people just really disregard the how difficult and how much work is happening in the second AD and the first AD. But those are unsung positions for sure.
Yeah.
And not widely understood. And I think just even the title first assistant director, I think people just kind of remember high school, or like what the assistant director, like I think it's thought of as like someone who just helps the director, which is not what it is at all.
Totally.
An assistant to the director is something else. Whereas like if the name really reflected, it would be like the set manager, or I don't even know.
The boss.
Production. and production manager is a different title too, but that sort of sums up more to me like what a first assistant director actually does.
Yeah. Well, you've been so generous with your time, and we're getting close to to time here. Any other questions?
Not that I can think of.
Any questions for me about anything?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What is your advice for actors who are out here who've trained and put in the time? They've come out here and they've gotten a few auditions and a few on cameras, and I think a lot of people reach a point, 6 months, 6 years, where they think, you know what, I gotta do something else with my life. What is your advice for those people who feel they're at that point?
I mean, it's an individual discussion. I mean, I can't answer that for you, and it's something everyone wrestles with.
That's why I ask it, because a lot of people listen and think, hey, when is my opportunity going to come? And they're at the minimum acceptable standard to work, but for some reason, I think there's many people who just don't get those opportunities, and I think some of them check out a little early.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long, hard road, no matter. And when things are going well, it feels like it's just going to keep going well. And then when things are going badly, it feels like it'll never stop being bad. I remember when I was in film school, I came out here for like a film festival, and a professor had hooked me up with, he was a former producer on In Living Color. He had worked on that a long time ago. That was like a SNL type TV show from the 90s. But he had a big house in Brentwood or whatever, and I was in film school. I didn't really know what I was just went to the guy's house, and he sort of saw that I didn't really have that much experience or that many relevant questions. And then he was just sort of reflecting, and he said, you have to think of the business as a cartoon, because there's certainly other industries that are harder by far, but there's something about like the public nature of it, of people, your friends and your family, just being able to see what you're doing and looking up your IMDb profile and sort of knowing how well you're doing in a way that you can't, like your friend who's a science teacher back in your old middle school, like you don't know how well that person is doing
That's interesting.
You just have to like take their word for it.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that sort of stressful public component of the work, and he described it as having this cartoonish quality where it's like, on bad days, it is like if you make a bad movie or if you do something that's unsuccessful, it is like a piano dropped on your head a little bit. But then on the good days, it's like they're driving trucks of money up to your front door and putting up in there. So like there is this sort of kind of absurd, exaggerated quality about the industry that you just have to sort of get on board with as quickly as you can, because that's not going to change.
Mm-hmm.
And make peace with it the best you can.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of things out of your control, so you just have to do what you can to get through it.
If anyone wants to know more about you, do you maintain a website? Do you give classes, seminars, master classes, anything like that? Anything you want everyone to know about?
This is the closest thing to a master class. I'm up to Paradigm. You can call my agents there. And Mosaic.
Yeah.
Do you maintain social media or a website, anything like that?
No, not really.
Okay.
I mean,
I wanted to ask in case there was something you wanted to plug.
I
No,
think
there's
the
nothing to
best
plug.
thing, if you have not seen Gordimer Gibbons' Life on Normal Street, I think it was such a critically acclaimed piece as well, because the storytelling is so lovely, the message is so wholesome. You can watch it with your whole family, but it's really smart. So I encourage anybody who hasn't seen it.
Thank you for saying that. And Shaan does such good work in it too. And that is a show that I was very proud of. And there was one year where we got 4 out of the 5 WGA nominations for like Best Children's Show, which was like really that was like a proud moment. And we got DGA nominations too, and the actors won a bunch of awards. So yeah, that is a special show that didn't last that long, but I think it's you can find it on Amazon Prime.
And you can get God of Love on iTunes.
That's true,
right? And if you haven't seen God of Love, I mean, for anybody who's trying to create their own content and wants to see just a beautiful, wholesome piece that ended up winning an Academy Award, then I urge you to go and watch that, because it is totally adorable.
Thank you for saying that. And I guess I would add, because I was a filmmaker, or I was trying to, I happen to act in it as well, so it wasn't quite sort of what you're talking about of an actor thinking of like, how can I generate content for myself? But that sort of indirectly happened for me.
Mm-hmm.
There is something to be said for a short piece of entertainment that you're starring in, that's like pretty well done and well produced, that you can forward a link to someone, because they can, just even meetings I still go on now, like I can tell that they just watched the short like the hour before I got there, because my agents forwarded over there. So it is good to have like something that really shows off your what you bring to the table in a small digestible piece of data.
All right, so last question.
Yeah.
As a actor and as a writer and as a director, what if you could choose? Like, what would you act in next? What would you direct next, and what would you write next? In a perfect world, you get to do them all.
Interesting. Well, the writing and directing I'll cheat on, because the best is when you can direct your own material.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, I have my indie feature that I'm working on now that hopefully that'll come together, sort of fantastical romantic comedy situation that maybe I'll do a table read with you guys once it comes together. And then acting wise, acting is sort of the distant third for me. I always enjoy doing it, but I never feel like I'm quite doing it right, or like I feel like
Welcome to the club.
I was just going to say, now you know how actors feel.
Yeah, I feel like I'm doing like what a director would think is the right. Like my process is like, how would I direct myself, and I do that. Like it's not this from the inside thing. So I'm just like, how does this fit in? What does this need? And I'll just kind of do that. But the bar is so low for me. I will do any acting.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I say, yeah.